Welcome to the Profits on Purpose podcast, where we explore the journeys of purpose-led founders and the financial strategies that have helped them survive and thrive. I'm your host, Nate Littlewood, and today's guest is Tippens, who is the founder and chief eternal optimist of Goods That Matter. Tippy began her entrepreneurial journey in 2010 with Bird Project Soap, which was a black, bird-shaped soap that raised funds for the BP oil spill cleanup. A graduate of Pratt's industrial design program, she left New York, moved to New Orleans, and built her company around a simple formula: beautiful, eco-friendly products that support social and environmental causes. Goods That Matter donates a portion of each sale, nearly $80,000 to date as far as I understand, and was Louisiana's first benefit corporation. Along the way, she's expanded from a Kickstarter campaign to a mix of e-commerce, wholesale, and brick and mortar shops, collaborating with local makers and using design to spark hope and social change. Tippy, welcome to the show. It is so great to have you here.
Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Of course. Well, Tippy, a great place for us to start, I guess, is talking a little bit about your origin story. From what I understand, Bird Project Soap began as a response to the BP oil spill. I'm curious to understand, how did you know or get to the point of understanding that there was actually a sustainable business to be built off the back of this?
I think it was definitely an intuitive knowledge. I did not have a business plan. I did not have a financial plan. I felt compelled to do it. It was really a throw your hat and catch up to it sort of situation for me. So, yeah, I don't know if I've ever felt something so strongly before, but I just really felt compelled to do it. I felt like, what would happen if I put everything that I had behind this idea and just see what happens?
I love that.
Um, so,
As
yeah, it was a
as
big risk.
Absolutely. I gather you're a fairly creative sort of person. Would you say that there was anything different about the way that you went into this decision compared to some of the ways that you've made other big decisions in your life?
Um, Let me think. I think that in this situation, I suppose since it was such a massive environmental disaster that I was creating this product in response to,
Hmm.
it really motivated me. And, I had worked freelance in the past as a product designer or graphic designer, furniture designer. I had never owned a business of this kind before,
Hmm.
having a business that includes manufacturing and distribution and online sales, and I had never done anything like that before. I had had photography shows where I sold my work, or I'd been hired, full time or part time or freelance, but this was a
Mm.
whole new ball game.
Hmm.
So yeah, I just I'm not really sure. Looking back, I just know that I was completely compelled and just felt that I absolutely had to do
Mm.
it.
Hmm.
And I remember being surprised, when I decided to move myself to New Orleans from
Hmm.
New York. My mom actually helped me and was also
Mm.
supportive of this idea, me taking on a lease and not
Hmm.
having a job. I just really did throw my hat to catch up to it. And I think, I had started that Kickstarter campaign, and Kickstarter at that time was a new thing.
Yeah.
I had gone to some Kickstarter meetups in New York before I left, that the founders would host with people, that had had campaigns. It was sort of like a Q&A session
Hmm.
for people that might be interested. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to use Kickstarter for this idea.
Hmm.
So that was an exciting, accomplishment too. I think I raised $6,000 for these first batches of soaps. I had set my goal for half of that, 2,500, and we met that goal in like 3 days. Um, so it was something that people really connected with. There's a lot of layers to those bird soaps. They're symbolic of going
Mm,
oil to clean. They're in that abstract shape of a bird.
hmm.
Um, and so as people use them, they just sort of connect more and more with the concept and with the good that they do. So it was one of these projects that just it took on its own life and became much larger than me, and I had to keep up with it.
Hmm.
Um, so it was a very lucky start, and so we moved from, Kickstarter to online sales very quickly. I got a lot of press because of the Kickstarter campaign. And that really drove the online sales for the first 3 years.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So you're a benefit corporation, aka B Corp, and
Hmm.
it's clear to me that you place a very high value on, social and environmental impact. And I think one of the things that a lot of consumers often kind of overlook or don't really understand that when a brand or a company does that, makes these sort of commitments, there's often a cost with that. And I suspect a lot of times a very substantial cost of deciding to run a business that way. I was wondering if, and you've also got the philanthropic component here where you're donating a portion of your profits, right?
Hmm.
I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about some of the numbers behind this and how you manage to keep pricing and margins viable while also staying true to some of these commitments that you've made.
Sure. Yeah. So I think some people advised me in the beginning, like, well, maybe you should just start your business and then add the good stuff on later once you
Hmm.
become established. And to me, the whole reason I was starting this business was to do something good, to do something to
Hmm.
help this dire situation. Um, so I rejected those ideas.
Hmm.
And when I started too, the bird soaps actually donated 50% of the
Hmm.
proceeds. This was such a large disaster that I just wanted to make a big difference.
Hmm.
Um, so I think people really connected with that as well. That helped their
Hmm.
success, actually. I wasn't just donating 5% or 2% or 1%. I was donating 50%. Um, so, the money that people were spending, it was a lot of it was going to the cause. Half of it was
Hmm.
going to the cause. Um, so I mean, that's the reason I'm in business. I
Hmm.
don't I don't know if I would have a business if it weren't for this ethos, for this mission.
Hmm.
So to me, it's part of it. And without it, I'm not interested. Um,
Right.
so yeah, so we donate 10% of the profits from the products that we make. And we are a B Corp. I've been a benefit corporation in legal structure since 2012, I believe, when they first
Oh,
became
wow.
available in Louisiana,
Okay.
and was the first B Corp in Louisiana. And then just 2 years ago, went through the process of doing the certification process, which is very in depth and
Hmm.
yeah, takes a lot of time and does have cost involved. So to be a B Corp in legal structure doesn't have a cost involved. But
Hmm.
in the beginning, you were still included on B Lab's page, web page. But now you have to be a certified B to be included in
Got
any
it.
of the marketing or on their website.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, there is a cost involved to be a certified B. My business in the beginning, before benefit corporations were available in Louisiana, was a L3C, which is a
Hmm.
sort of mix of a nonprofit and an LLC.
Hmm. Okay.
Um, yeah, so that's how I had been following B Corps for a while, and so was excited when they became available in Louisiana,
Interesting.
and So yeah, was ready to jump on board.
So it sounds like this mission, purpose, and cause was so important to you that it was an absolute non-negotiable.
Mm-hmm.
And you essentially said, this has to be part of the DNA of the company. Otherwise, I'm not interested in running the company.
Right.
And you've basically gotten the rest of the finance and the numbers and the business side to work around that core,
Mm-hmm.
which is, yeah, a commendable approach to doing it. So, something we chatted briefly about the other day when we caught up, I just wanted to circle back to it.
Mm-hmm.
We spoke a little bit about the communication strategy that you use for talking to customers and people who are coming into your ecosystem about your purpose. I'm not sure if you remember, but I shared with you a story about how when I first started my e-commerce business, which was also a B Corp, we initially thought that the right way to lead was with our impact and purpose and, talking about all these great things that we were doing. But I eventually came to appreciate that a lot of consumers don't really appreciate being guilted into buying products. And the approach that we ended up moving towards is essentially focusing on the consumer and the consumer's problems and the consumer's needs first,
Mm-hmm.
and then having all of that impact piece be discoverable for the people who cared. But there was a subset of our population who probably didn't really care. And those people might never have heard the message about, the B Corp and all the other stuff we were doing. I'm curious what your approach is to this and what are some of the different strategies you have, tested with respect to communication, and what do you feel is the most effective and impactful strategy today?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of we are just very transparent about, where we make things, how we make them, who they donate to. Um, and then, like we talked about the other day, a friend of mine said to me a long time ago, when I was first starting down this path of, sustainability and how that relates to product design. And she said, well, you have to make it cool, so I feel like, we try to make things that people connect with and that are beautiful. And if you have this beautiful object that is eco-friendly and it costs around the same, maybe a little bit more than an object that isn't eco-friendly, then you're you're probably going to want to buy the more beautiful one anyways.
Hmm.
Um, so I feel like, I curate our shop and, our product offering so that everything is really beautiful and functions really well and is made ethically and is sourced ethically. Um, and, when we talk to customers in the shop and then, they sort of have a question about something, they're always like, oh, wow, wow, that's amazing. It does it all.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I think it's like a benefit. It's like,
Hmm.
oh, this object is really beautiful. It works great. And it's made of bamboo, or it's made by
Hmm.
a women-owned company. It's
Right.
made by a family-owned tea farm that is
Hmm.
kosher and organic. And
Yeah.
so I think it's like a benefit. It's like, oh wow,
Yeah.
this is actually healthy for me instead of,
Yeah.
a a toxic plastic thing.
Interesting. Interesting. So it sounds like you take a design elegance and product functionality perspective comes first. Oh, and by the way, it also happens to have this, social or environmental angle, but it doesn't sound like you're relying on the latter to kind of close the deal. Is that accurate?
I feel like it's all together, like
Yeah.
it's all a package
Hmm.
deal. Um,
Okay.
so, there's some products that we make that are like for disaster relief. So
Hmm.
that is the headline. Like, okay,
Hmm.
this is for flood relief in Asheville or Texas or New Mexico.
Hmm.
Um, and then it also has all of the, recycle glass, eco soy,
Hmm.
um, et cetera, et cetera. But I think generally, like on our website, the attributes are, all listed together.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
it's sort of equal billing.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. So you've come at this from a background in industrial and furniture design, from what I understand. I
Mm-hmm.
imagine that there are parts of that background that have been incredibly helpful to your career and what you're now doing as an entrepreneur. But I'm guessing there might have been other parts of running a business that you perhaps struggled with a little bit. Can you talk me through that? Like which parts of running a business were really, really easy for you, and what are some of the stuff that has been a bit less intuitive?
I think being a designer, problem solving is part of your toolkit,
Hmm.
and there are lots of problems to solve in running a business.
Oh yeah. Understatement of the century there.
Yeah, so I think that's something like as a designer, I am a problem solver. I'm very resourceful.
Hmm.
You tend to turn problems around, look at them different ways. Like, okay, if that's not working this way, then maybe I need to flip this problem around and see if I can solve it from another view. So, yeah, I think the problem solving and being resourceful, I often, try to, figure out a way to do something that isn't expensive or
Hmm.
that I don't know isn't standard
Hmm.
operation for doing something. So I think that definitely comes from my design background. And
Hmm.
then the parts that have been harder for me coming from a design background were definitely the financial side. So I
Hmm.
had never used QuickBooks before, I had never used Excel.
Hmm.
And when I first opened those programs, it really just it hurt my brain. It was just very uncomfortable and I hated it.
That's funny. The
um,
same thing happens to me when I play around in design software.
oh really?
Yes, it also hurts my
Yeah.
brain.
It was just like junk, 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 junk. It's not functioning.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely had a lot of learning around Excel and I use spreadsheets a lot.
Hmm.
Now they're actually a favorite tool for me. I'm a little bit dyslexic when it comes to numbers, so
Uh-huh.
I rely on Excel a lot for just like,
Yeah.
okay, I plunk them all in there. It does the math for me. Awesome.
Hmm.
But yeah, and I think, like forecasting and also just sort of learning like retail calendars, that was something that took some
Mm.
adjustment for me. I think as a designer, you tend to be, or I tend to be inspired by like what's happening at the moment. So, oh, it's summer. Let me design something now. But for retail, you
Hmm.
need to design that summer product, 3 or 4 months ahead of time.
Yeah.
Um, so, so yeah, definitely some learning around retail and financials.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. So, on the topic of retail, one of the things that really intrigues me about your background and, 15 years running this company is that you have dabbled in so many different channels. So, you started off on Kickstarter, which is a product crowdfunding platform. You've had a couple of brick and mortar stores, which have operated both on a consignment basis and a wholesale basis. You're selling online and obviously, physical retail stores as well. Given all this experience that you've had in retailing and the different selling and retail models, I'd love to unpack and learn a little bit about some of the challenges and lessons learned along the way. And perhaps are there any parts of that retailing journey that have been particularly challenging for you?
Yeah, I feel like my business journey has been an organic one. So, I started on Kickstarter as a way to raise funds for this idea that I had to help. And then that led to online sales. I started a very clunky website that I did
Hmm.
myself, but we were just selling the bird soaps and maybe like some surrounding merch, like a tote bag or washcloth. Um, and we did that for 2 to 3 years, just the bird soaps online. And then shops started asking me, like, can I buy them for my store? So then we started wholesaling them. So then I had to adjust my pricing for wholesaling,
Mm-hmm.
because I had never done that before. And from there, then I started designing and creating other products with the same formula, made in the US, gives to a partner cause, and is correlated to that partner cause, like the use of the product to the
Mm-hmm.
donation partner. And so from there, then, I sold them online, but then I started doing the markets. And I did those for a good, I guess, 3-ish years. And 3 years of doing markets. I did them mostly in New Orleans, but I also traveled for them. I went to Austin and Colorado and California, to reach people that were in my, sort of target market that are already attracted to eco-friendly goods. And then the market schlep, it's not like my products were small. So it was a schlep to do those
Yeah.
markets on the regular. Um, and yeah, in New Orleans, it's hot. It's a real schlep.
Yeah.
So I got real tired of doing those. So I was like, okay, I need to get a storefront. Um, and so I think the storefront is probably the most difficult. It's hard to find a commercial space. It's very
Mm-hmm.
competitive, very expensive. And when I first started doing that in New Orleans, it was at the height of, it was so hard to find a retail space and so expensive.
Mm.
So I started by subletting a space from a coffee shop. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I noticed in going to meetings in that coffee shop, there was the second floor space and it wasn't being used. And so I asked, I was like, is that your space? If you're not using it, can I sublet it from you? And so she said yes.
Mm.
So a friend of mine and I had our studio there, and then we started a store there. It's a very low overhead, low energy way to have a storefront. Um, I'm in the midst of writing a book and including all of the details on how to do that. So hopefully I'll finish that this year. But anyhow, so having that low overhead way of having a brick and mortar is what made it possible for me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I totally totally hear you on schlepping stuff in and out of markets, by the way. I spent a summer or so doing that with my own brand early on.
okay.
And it was just soul destroying. Like
Yeah.
leaving at the end of the day, having sold, I don't know, maybe $300 or $400 worth of product was a good day.
Uh-huh.
And you're thinking to yourself, why am I doing this? These giant tote box, all this equipment, tables,
Yeah.
lighting, so much stuff to move around. But I'd love to get your perspective on this. One thing I didn't appreciate about selling face to face and going into markets and talking to customers every day is how much I learned from that experience.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We went into it thinking, okay, we've designed and created this product, and sure, we did some, research. I mean, having connected with so many consumers in different retail environments, could you talk a little bit about some of those intangible benefits that you might get from that face-to-face customer contact?
Absolutely. I agree. That was one of my favorite things of doing markets is just talking to so many people and getting their feedback. Um, I think that's something that I definitely appreciate about having this business in general is in some of my other, in corporate design positions, you create this product and it goes out to market and some of them are still made today, but I have never talked to an actual customer about that product.
Mm,
And
hmm.
so, you create it, you make it, it's made, and it just has its own separate life. So
Hmm.
that is something that I really enjoy about having this business is, getting that direct feedback from customers.
So, Tippy, You just mentioned something really interesting about a collective shop where you're essentially sharing the cost of the rent and the overheads, as well as the cost of staffing that shop with other brands, from what I understand.
Mm-hmm.
The cost of getting into retail is often a big hurdle for a lot of stage brands who, would typically go about thinking to do this all by themselves. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about this collective model that you described and how that works and how you came up with it and, you know, any tips for people who might be interested in testing something similar out.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So I came up with this model out of necessity. Let me start over with since I started. Um, let's see. Sure. Yeah. I came up with this model out of necessity. So when I first, wanted to start a retail space, I think rents were around, $6,000 a month. Um, and that's just not something that I could afford on my own. So yeah, my concept was to have a shared space, a collective shop space where everybody in the shop has some sort of social environmental aspect to their business. And then we would all share in the cost of the rent and then contribute one shop day per week per business. Um, and then everybody that is a shop partner keeps 100% of their sales. We use Square, so minus the Square fees. And then we also carry some products in the shop that are on consignment.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, so when we first started this, I think there were three shop partners. And so we each did 2 days a week. I just, it makes me uncomfortable to have a lot of overhead. So,
Hmm.
so I think that's part of why I came up with this model instead of,
Yeah.
coming up with getting a loan and paying employees. To run the store.
Yeah.
So yeah, so we each contribute a shop day, and this is our model both in New Orleans and in Richmond, Virginia. And then, I also work to make sure everybody's products look good together,
Hmm.
so that it's not disjointed. And we don't do it booth style. We mix everything together throughout the shop. So it looks like a
Hmm.
normal boutique
Yeah.
shop instead of, one business has this, one business has that.
Right.
Um, and I think another benefit of this model is I think customers really enjoy talking to the business owners. There's
Absolutely.
different business owners each day. And so I think that customers really enjoy, we know
Mm.
more about our products than, of course, you can train someone, but we're still going to know more than, whatever we can
Yeah.
train somebody. But we do train each other on each other's products so that we can all speak to
Mm.
about each other's brands. Um, and yeah, it just definitely, I think it's beneficial in a lot of ways. It's like, we can share marketing costs.
Hmm.
When we're doing an event, it's we all participate. And so
Hmm.
that work is divvied up amongst six people instead of falling on,
Mm.
the responsibility all on one.
Yeah.
Um, Problem solving, when issues come up and, if there's an issue with the building or you need to discuss something with the landlord, then, you can talk about these things with your shop partners. It's not just all on you.
Yeah.
Um, I also think it's more fun. It's
Yeah.
like, it's just more fun to
That makes a lot of
collaborate
sense.
and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a really interesting approach, and I think it's a smart way to make the retail presence more accessible, more affordable.
Hmm.
So well done on pioneering that and figuring it out.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Tippy, I wanted to go back to this impacts piece and also just offer a clarification for the
Hmm.
folks listening. We were talking about B Corp and B certification earlier, and you mentioned a couple of years ago you got your certification, which
Hmm.
is basically a questionnaire that one has to complete with B Lab, and you have to get above a certain score. And as long as you get above a certain score and you can provide the documentation, then they kind of give you the rubber stamp. But there is also a legal requirement to being a certified corporation in that you legally have to change your entity structure to a B corporation. And you, from what I understand, had actually done this many, many years earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And so you already had that legal structure in place. I'm
Yep.
curious, what was it that triggered you to actually want to go through the certification process in, I guess, 2023? Is that right?
Yeah, I think since there were changes in B Lab that as a B Corp and business structure, I just wasn't included in it.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
I wasn't listed on the website. I wasn't eligible to go to the conference.
Hmm.
So it's like, but I'm still a B Corp, like, uh, but yeah, so I think it was a curiosity to see, if being certified would make a difference and to
Hmm.
be part of that B Corp community. So once you are certified, then oh gosh, I can't remember what the website is that we're all on, B something hub or, and I was curious to see if it would help our business.
Yeah.
And the nice surprise was to see how high our score was. I think our score was 140 something.
Hmm.
So we really do a lot. My business is very petite, but we do a lot. We donate to causes. We use eco-friendly materials. We
Hmm.
manufacture locally. Our shop, um, through a solar system service, like through the electricity bill, I pay to do solar for our shop.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's green energy for our shop. We use, recycled paper boxes and tape and soy ink
Hmm.
for our paper tape. And I don't know, we do a whole laundry list. And so
Hmm.
part of that certification process was really interesting to see, like, oh wow, yeah, I think the max is like 180 and the lowest is 80.
Hmm.
So we were at 140, which was pretty high, especially
Yeah.
for being such a small business.
Totally, totally. And as someone who's been through the process, I know how much hard work it is to pull together all the information and documents and proof and everything that you need to do that. So it's
Yeah,
certainly a big
it's a lot.
accomplishment. So well done, well done.
Thank you.
Well,
Likewise.
on the topic of I guess environmental thoughtfulness, something else that you mentioned to me the other day is that a few years back, I understand one of your retail stores was actually damaged by a hurricane, which forced you to relocate. It's 2025. Like everyone is aware of the concept of climate change now. But what intrigued me about this example is that this is a real life, small business operating in the US, and you are taking some very, very tangible steps or actions here to mitigate against climate change in your own business. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I started my business in New Orleans, which Louisiana is at the forefront of climate change. I think Louisiana, if it's still the same number, it might even be more, but it loses a football field of earth. Like, I can't remember if
Mm,
it's every day or every hour. It's a lot.
mm,
Um, so the coastline is disappearing because of being pillaged by oil and gas industry. And it has gotten hotter. I lived there for 14 years, and the last few years, um, June has become part of the depths of summer. So,
mm-hmm,
um, and retail is very affected by weather. So when it's
mm-hmm,
crazy hot outside, people aren't out walking around.
mm-hmm,
You have to save for the summer there. That's the slow season there. So it went
mm-hmm,
from being July through September. Now it's June through September. So that's a
mm-hmm.
fourth of the year that
Yeah.
your business is incredibly slow.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, New Orleans is experiencing climate change already.
Yeah.
And I felt like, well, I don't feel comfortable. just having all of my eggs in this one basket. I need to start a second location in a place that is more climate stable. So anywhere along the Gulf Coast, it's like, oh, well,
Mm-hmm.
still in a hurricane zone, still
Yeah.
have, the incredible heat. I wanted somewhere that would balance out the seasons. So
Right.
I
Mm-hmm.
settled on Asheville because they're busy in the summer. People go there, to beat the heat. Um, Thought it was more climate stable as far as climate change goes. And so, yeah, decided upon Asheville after a few years of research. And so opened the location in June, had our grand opening in August, and Hurricane Helene happened in September. Our shop was in the River Arts District, so that was devastated. We were one of 10 businesses that didn't flood, but there were hundreds of businesses that did. So, that neighborhood was just devastated, down to the floorboards gone, like two-story buildings. So, it was a very difficult thing to come to. I had just spent so much time and come upon this decision, and, I had moved my apartment there. My car was totaled in the storm. I was there for it, I was there for the whole thing. So anyhow, yeah. And I just came to the realization, we're too new. I know
Yeah.
from COVID that that's what you need to get through something like that.
Mm.
So yeah, we made the very difficult decision to close that location. So we had to, terminate our lease with the landlord, and that was a difficult process. Um, and thanks to some dear friends of mine, they have a restaurant here in Richmond called Proper Pie, which has been around for about 10 years and has become a huge favorite for the area, and people travel to it. They have New Zealand savory pies and also sweet pies. So they own the building, and they had a storefront that was open due to some work being done on it
Mm-hmm.
downstairs. And so they threw me a lifeline and said, we don't know if you want to come to Richmond. I went to college here and I lived here for 10 years. But if you do, the space is open. So while I was displaced, I, came here to stay with friends and family, and, checked out the space. And so decided to move the shop to Richmond from Asheville. So yeah, I mean, ironically, I started the second location to have a more climate stable location, which was
Mm.
destroyed by climate change. But
Yeah.
it was a very difficult year. But I think, this is just, it's normal. This is normal now. There is no, climate safe area.
Yeah.
People are going to be moving because of climate change.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, New York, I've seen all of the flooding on the subways. I mean, it's very scary. It's something that, we should be working more actively as for, for many different, for infrastructure, for protecting the climate, and I do believe that there needs to be business assistance.
Yeah.
Um, the only assistance I got was a little bit of FEMA money, but it wasn't enough to move my business. So I did a
Right.
crowdfunding campaign
Mm-hmm.
um, to cover those moving costs.
My goodness, Tippy, you certainly have seen a lot in your years of running the business, and I am so impressed that you're still showing up and chipping away at this after all of these setbacks and hurdles that have gotten in your way. So kudos to you for having the will and the drive to keep going with all that.
Thank you.
Changing tone a little bit, what would you say is some of the highlights and happiest periods of running the business? What are some of the parts of this that you've actually enjoyed most over the years?
Let's see. Yeah, certainly making our donations. So
Mm-hmm.
that's always a highlight. It always brings me so much joy to, make those donations. We do that 2 times a year. We do it
Mm-hmm.
in May. There's Give NOLA Day. That's a local foundation runs Good Give NOLA Day where they match donations to local nonprofits. So we do it then so that most of our donations are matched. And then we do it again after the holidays, at the end of the
Mm-hmm.
year.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, donating is a huge joy. Interacting with customers, like we've talked about a little bit, that's a huge joy. Just seeing people so happy in the store, like, oh, it feels so good in here. It's so beautiful. Everything is so beautiful in here. I want everything.
Mm.
People just can pick up on the mission and
Yeah.
what we're trying to accomplish. And that always feels really good.
Yeah.
It's really
I bet.
gratifying. And also the partners in the shops, like in both
Yeah.
stores, I just love the businesses that I'm collaborating with.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all really wonderful people and really enjoy working with them. I think that's something that's really important to me in all of this is liking who I'm working with.
Mm-hmm.
Like the woman who's my studio manager, Marianne, she's wonderful. And I just love working with her. And, the people that are shop helpers that aren't shop, the businesses, but people that are hired to help us run the shop, they're just wonderful. Everyone's just a delight to spend time
Mm-hmm.
with.
Yeah.
Um, so that's really important to me. And the people that make our products, like that's
Mm-hmm.
important to me to like have the interactions like, okay, we need to make, 500 notebooks or the letterpress person I work with, the candle maker. They're all just really wonderful people and I enjoy working with them. So
Yeah.
the collaboration is really important to me. It's something that I enjoy and brings value to my life. And um, yeah, so I think it's all just, I've tried to create this thing that is a happy, of course there's stress and there are annoyances and sometimes you're just like, I just want to shut this thing down. But
Mm-hmm.
overall the joys outweigh the
Yeah.
difficulties.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad that you are finding joyful moments and, there's parts of this that are driving you to keep going because you're doing incredibly important work here. And I love the way that you have interwoven impact and thoughtful choices into so many different aspects of the way you do business. And I am so incredibly grateful that you've taken your time today to share with us the highs and lows and all you've learned through your 15-year entrepreneurial journey in running this company. So thank you for sharing all those thoughts. Before we wrap up here,
Thank you.
Tippy, of course, it's been great having you. Before we wrap up here, where should people go if they would like to learn more about you, the business, the products, anything like that? I am going to include some show notes below for the folks that are listening. Any specific links that you would like people to check out?
Sure. Yeah, the Goods That Matter website is goodsthatmatter.com. We have two separate websites for our collective shops. It's kindheartedgoods.com and then the goodshopnola.com.
Okay, perfect. I'll
Yeah.
include both of them below.
Okay.
But thank you again, Tippy. I really appreciate the opportunity to chat with you, and thanks for sharing your journey with us. Been a pleasure having you on Profits and on the. Let me say that again. Been a pleasure having you on Profits on Purpose, and we look forward to seeing you folks again next time. Take care. Bye.
Thanks so much. Likewise. Thanks so much again for having me. It was fun.